Hey, so good evening, people, whoever it is that ever watches my videos. This topic is way off my usual, but it's just something that bugged me recently. I was thinking about because everyone's all into time travel, which is like a really great notion for science fiction movies or whatever. But I think is totally impossible in any practical means, might even be absolutely impossible in terms of physics because the past very truly might not exist and there's no way of going back to a previous condition because you'd have to literally move every single atom in the universe back to a previous condition to go to the past. It's not just you who can go to the past. To go to the past means moving the entire universe backwards in time to a point. You can't just take a fragment of the universe and move it to a different timeline thing. It's not like that. This isn't a storybook where you can flip to a page previously. I just really think it's probably totally physically impossible. Besides that, something that somebody could use sometime in a science fiction book maybe, sorry I'm distracted because the angle of this camera is weird, is that when you go back into the past, so let's say you went, let's just pretend I could go 10 years into the past, okay? And in some storylines, it's like, oh, it's a problem if you meet yourself or something like that. It's like, that's totally doesn't make sense because let's say I went 10 years in the past and I just walked right up to myself and shook my hand. Maybe this is going to be weird because in 10 years from now, I'm going to come back in the past and do this again sort of thing. And I should have already known this was going to happen if it happened before, but let's get into that. That gets into even weirder logic complications, which is another part of the reason that I really think that this whole travel into the past is just ludicrous. Great story thing, and I encourage people to use it for morality tales or anything like that, but in terms of actual physics, it's just absurd. Even so, let's say I grab my hand in the past and I go to shake my hand and it's like, I don't need to worry that I'm gonna like atomize myself or something like that because it's like, oh, well, you're touching yourself. Because the thing we have to remember is I am not the same thing physically. Like 7 years ago, none of these atoms that make Kali now were part of Kali then. Like I am made of right now a bunch of carrots and whatever else, potatoes and wheat, a lot of wheat, and I like pasta. So a lot of like, I'm distributed all over my past. The past Kali is in the dirt of wherever all the food that made this Kali is. So even if it was like some problem in terms of like if you touch yourself, you blow up or something like that, it's like, it's more like it would be funny that you're walking along a path and all of a sudden your foot explodes because you stepped on something that is going to, in the future, in 7 years or something in the future, be eaten by you and then will become the future you. We are organizations of things, but we aren't the things that organize the thing. Like my brain even, I don't know, is that possible? It's like even my brain is like, none of the atoms of my brain are the same atoms that were my brain those years ago. It's just those atoms get replaced, but they retain enough structural integrity to carry the similar pattern of activity that makes me think that I am the same person that I was 7 years ago or whatever, 10 years ago, vaguely. You know, I-ness is like some weird illusion of the patterns in us, but it's not our physical self. This physical self that I have now none of these atoms were me 10 years ago, and 10 years before that there was none of me, and 10 years before that there was none of me. I'm a bunch of, like right now, if I had to worry about my past self, it's like I'm a bunch of, poop and skin desiccation that's lying all over the world as I walk along the street. But there is no, like, the physical self is a delusion of our minds, almost like that this is a self is an illusion of sorts, because it's only this concept that continues, this concept in electrical patterns in my brain that make me think that I am the person I was a moment ago, even, or a year ago. And so, yeah. And the whole going back in time, like I said, it's like to go back in time means rotating the entire universe back in time. That means you have to ungravity all the gravitational activity that happened everywhere in the entire universe to actually go back in time. How else is it still just lying there? It's like waiting for you to just pop in, like it's a theater set and you just drop in. I just don't think that that's the way it works. The universe is way too integrated and all joined together to just be able to do that kind of like dropping in. It would be a nice idea, and as I said, continue using it for theater and plays and movies and things like that, stories, books. It's a good literary device to be able to go to the past and travel to the future. These are cool ideas, but I really don't think that any of that is at all physically possible. Going to the future is easy. You just wait around for it to happen and you find out. Or go to sleep for a long time and you wake up in a year and now you've traveled kind of into the future a year. But past travel, I think, is just too absurd to even substantially think about, honestly.